Horror. The emotion powerful enough to control people before a single word is spoken is the reason we hesitate before opening a door. How silence can feel heavier than noise. And why some stories stay in our minds long after they end. Because horror doesn't only revolve around monsters or death. Sometimes it's uncertainty, the feeling that something is wrong, even when everything looks normal. The greatest stories understand that horror is strongest when it's unexpected. A single unanswered question can create suspense for hours, and even stories that were never meant to be frightening can leave us unsettled. Because the moment horror appears when we least expect it, it feels real. That's why horror shapes so many unforgettable stories. It pushes characters to grow, to break, and even to survive. Horror isn't only about what's happening in the moment. It's also about the uncertainty of what could happen. And that raises one important question. Is it your character experiencing the horror or your audience? Either way, horror begins with suspense, that instinctive feeling that something is off before you can fully explain why. The longer you keep your audience trapped in that uncertainty, the stronger your horror becomes. Suspense works by creating questions the audience wants answered, while delaying those answers and steadily building tension and unease. Because of that, the audience does not wait passively. They start searching for clues. They begin guessing, imagining, filling in the gaps themselves. And often, what they create in their mind is more horrifying than anything you could have revealed directly. In the movie Jaws, we see this executed beautifully. Early in the film, Brody reveals that he fears the ocean due to a near-drowning accident as a child. Despite his instincts telling him otherwise, he still allows his children to swim. Immediately, the audience begins expecting something to go wrong. Soon after, we see something moving through the water toward a woman floating alone, only for it to reveal itself as an old man, which can be debated is scarier than a shark. Following this, someone begins talking to Brody, briefly blocking his view of the beach. But even while distracted, he refuses to fully take his eyes off of the water. And then,
I can't get down to the office, and that garbage truck next to the office has garbage.
nothing. Just a couple playing nearby. As viewers, we share the same perspective as Brody. We can only see so much, and we are desperately hoping nothing happens to his children. Then, while the kids continue swimming, that's when the shark finally strikes, forcing Brody to watch his greatest fear unfold directly in front of him. Now, what made this scene horrifying? Yes, obviously the shark attack, but more importantly, how long it took for it to happen. To understand how to write your own version of this, you need to understand the 3 stages of suspense. The first stage is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is the act of planting subtle hints or warnings about future events, building anticipation and suspense without fully revealing the outcome. This can be anything: a strange sound, a repeated symbol, a line of dialogue that seems meaningless at first, until you later realize it carried far more importance than you originally thought. These small details quietly prepare the audience for what is coming long before it finally arrives. An example of this can be seen in the Apothecary Diaries. In episode 14, we are introduced to the 4th concubine, Loulan. She is portrayed as cold and emotionless, constantly wearing a poker face. She rarely leaves her quarters and is widely recognized for her extravagant and ever-changing fashion. As the story progresses, Mama meets a girl named Shisui. For some reason, throughout the season, Shisui never seems to be doing any actual work, and instead spends most of her time wandering around catching insects. The two quickly become close because of their shared fascination with bugs, but something feels strange about her. No one really seems to know who Shisui is or where she came from. Yet, despite supposedly being a low-ranking servant, she is incredibly intelligent. Earlier in the story, it was established that many young girls brought into the palace were never given a proper education. So naturally, the audience begins asking questions. Who is she really? And this is where the foreshadowing begins connecting together. Loulan is said to never leave her quarters, while Shisui is constantly roaming around the palace freely. Loulan is known for her elaborate fashion and is even described as sometimes looking like a completely different person. And Shisui possesses a level of intelligence that should be unusual for someone in her position. Then, in episode 44, the truth is finally revealed. Loulan and Shisui were the same person the entire time, with Loulan secretly disguising herself so she could escape her confined life and experience freedom. When I'm trying to improve my writing, I pay close attention to every detail whenever I'm reading or watching something. The best part is that you can enjoy a story while simultaneously studying it at the same time. Good storytelling rarely reveals information without a reason. Usually, even the smallest detail serves a larger purpose later on. And once you start recognizing why certain details were included, you begin to understand how the writer thinks. You start seeing how they build tension, structure reveals, and guide the audience's emotions. And the more you understand that process, the more your own writing improves as well. The second stage is the callback. This is where you remind the audience that the danger still exists. You don't need constant horror on screen, because if the threat never leaves, the audience eventually becomes used to it. Sometimes all you need is a small reminder that something terrible is still lurking nearby. A brief moment that instantly brings the tension back. Let the fear fade for a while. Allow the audience to breathe. Then slowly reintroduce traces of the danger again. It does this extremely well. Throughout the film, even during normal conversations or quieter character moments, there are often unsettling details hidden in the background. Small visual cues that remind us Pennywise is still out there watching. And because of that, the audience never fully relaxes. We are constantly preparing ourselves for the moment the horror finally returns. The third stage is the payoff. This is the moment your audience finally sees the thread they've been waiting for. Think of it like a rubber band. The longer you stretch the tension, the harder it snaps. The thing does this perfectly in the blood test scene. By that point, the audience has no idea who to trust. Anyone in that room could be the monster. The director makes you sit with that uncertainty, making you suspect each person until Gary says this.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. You were the only one that could have got to that blood. We'll do you last.
Get away from me! Retreating! What is it?
Turns out, it wasn't Gary. Instead, it was Palmer. That's what a proper payoff does. It doesn't create fear from nothing. It releases all the fear you already built. So if your payoff isn't hitting as hard as you want it to, comment a movie camera emoji. Thanks! Now, suspense can come from your plot, but sometimes your location does the work before anything bad even happens. An abandoned house immediately tells the audience that danger is close. Even entering a place that's off limits feels unsettling on its own, but sometimes the opposite hits harder. A beautiful home, a clean hallway, a warm family dinner. Something normal hiding something deeply wrong creates a completely different kind of dread. It doesn't warn you, it lures you in. And when your character can't leave, that dread turns into pressure. The less freedom they have, the more trapped the audience feels alongside them. A great example of this is The Raid Redemption. A SWAT team enters a tenement controlled by a ruthless mobster and his army of killers. They think it's a straightforward operation. It isn't. Within minutes, they're outnumbered, cut off, and trapped inside the very building they came to clear. There's no calling for backup. There's no way out. The combination of confinement and overwhelming odds is what keeps viewers locked to the screen from that point forward. Let the audience expect something to happen, then delay it again, because that pause is exactly where unease lives. Think of it like a roller coaster slowly climbing upwards. You can't see the top, and you just keep hearing that clicking sound over and over. But here's the trick. Sometimes right before the drop, you let them relax. Think of that moment when you're sitting at the very top of the roller coaster. staring down, not knowing exactly when it's going to go. Give your characters that quiet moment and let the audience breathe again. Let them feel like the danger has passed, because that false sense of security is exactly what makes the next scene hit so much harder. Quiet moments matter because they give viewers a chance to reconnect with the characters, settle into your world, and lower their guard without even realizing it. That comfort is exactly what you want, because as a writer, it becomes your most powerful weapon. When the horror finally returns after that silence, it hits with a force that unbroken tension could never produce. Many of you probably know Berserk. Those early arcs following Guts and the Band of the Hawk are exactly what a false sense of security looks like done right. They travel together, they bond, they win battles and celebrate victories. It almost feels peaceful at times. And yes, demons exist in this world. We know that from the very beginning, but nothing prepares you for the betrayal that triggers the eclipse. That's where the whiplash comes from. Not from the horror itself, but the fact that it comes from somewhere you never expected. Seeing everyone perish one by one is heartbreaking in a way that's hard to put into words, because the story spends so much time making these characters feel real and human that when everything is ripped away, you're completely unprepared for it. When it comes to building fear in your story, there are two types of pressure points you can use. The first is the phobic pressure point. This is where you tap into fears that already exist within your audience. Things like spiders, deep water, darkness. You're not creating the fear from nothing. It's already there. You're just pulling it to the surface and giving it form inside your story. The advantage is the impact. When this phobia lands on the right viewer, it hits them hard, but there's a limitation. It's really personal. Someone who doesn't have that fear might feel nothing at all, while someone who does will feel immediate discomfort from something as simple as a single shot or moment. So it is a powerful tool, but it depends entirely on the audience's existing fears. The national pressure point is where fears are shared across society as a whole. This can include things like psychological instability, loss of identity, and social collapse. Instead of targeting something personal, it taps into worries that feel familiar on a collective level. That is what makes it so effective. It reflects anxieties people already recognize in real life, which is why it often resonates with a much wider audience. A fantastic example of this is The Truman Show. On the surface, it's about a man unknowingly living inside a TV show, but beneath that, it hits multiple national pressure points at once. Truman's entire reality is controlled without his consent, which connects to the fear of surveillance and loss of privacy. As he starts to notice inconsistencies, it also becomes a story about identity collapse, where everything he believed about his life turns out to be constructed. What makes it so powerful is that it does not rely on fear in a traditional sense. Instead, it slowly builds discomfort through the idea that your entire world could be controlled without you knowing. That kind of concept affects viewers because it is not personal to one character. It feels universally possible, which brings me to the familiarity of horror. If you really think about it, what is scarier than any monster? Humans. There are horrible things happening in the world every single day. Real situations where people lose control over what's happening to them. People being manipulated, stalked, or worse. And that is what makes this kind of horror so effective. The closer you can bring your story to everyday life, the easier it becomes for the audience to imagine themselves inside it. For example, your mom tells you to defrost a chicken before she leaves for work. Hours pass by and the chicken is still sitting in the freezer while she's on her way back home. That feeling of your heart dropping to your ass, everyone understands it immediately. The panic, the dread, the mental preparation for what's about to happen next. And that's what makes horror feel personal. Let's move on to restricting information, one of the most powerful ways to create suspense. When characters understand everything around them, the audience feels safe. There is no mystery left to uncover, and no reason to fear what comes next. But when a story limits the character's perspective, when they are confused, lost, or uncertain, audience is pulled into that uncertainty with them. We only learn what they learn. We only know what they know. That lack of information creates tension. because the audience is constantly trying to fill in the gaps themselves. Every missing answer becomes a source of fear, and every new detail feels important. The more uncertain the character feels, the more the audience begins to share that fear alongside them. Keep in mind, you should still reveal things, but just enough. You cannot keep your audience completely in the dark forever. Sometimes suspense becomes stronger when the audience knows more than the characters do. Now the fear changes. It's no longer what is happening. Now it becomes when will it happen? This creates dread. The audience watches characters walk directly toward danger while feeling powerless to stop it, and sometimes revealing small answers only creates even bigger questions. Instead of making the audience feel safer, it leaves them feeling even more lost than before, and sometimes you can use information in a completely different way. These videos take a lot of time to put together. If you're enjoying the video so far, please consider subscribing. There is a good chance you recognize all of these iconic stories, and they all share one thing in common. They were written by Stephen King, one of the most influential horror writers of all time. King explains that fear can be divided into 3 different categories. The first is gross out, pure shock, the kind of fear designed to disgust or overwhelm the audience through violence or disturbing imagery. The second is horror, the unnatural, seeing something that shouldn't exist, giant creatures, the dead walking around, or the feeling that something is standing in the darkness after the lights go out. But the final category is what King believes is the strongest. Terror. Not what you can clearly see, but what you think might be there. Hearing breathing behind you in the dark, only to turn around and find nothing there. Because terror forces the audience to imagine the danger for themselves. The mind begins filling in the missing pieces, and what we imagine is often far more frightening than anything a story could directly show us. And depending on the story, creators can focus on one of these fears or combine all 3 together, like in the movie Alien. Because behind all of them is one of the strongest fears in horror: the unknown. Humans are naturally afraid of the unknown. The less certainty the audience has, the more vulnerable they feel. And this is slightly different from simply restricting information for a short period of time and then revealing it later in the story, because you don't always have to explain everything. Sometimes the most effective choice is to never fully reveal what is going on at all. Leaving things unresolved or unexplained can keep the audience sitting in that uncertainty, trying to piece it together themselves. Now that you know how to write horror into your story, do you know how to write unforgettable lore? I broke it down in this video. Go check it out. Anywho, have yourselves a lovely day. Bye.